Hi, I'm Bruce McCuaig. I'm Director of Product Marketing for SAP Solutions for GRC. I'm going to give you a quick demo showing you how we integrate digital risk-based auditing with the 3 lines of defense. So first let me give you a quick explanation as to what we mean by the 3 lines of defense. And it's a framework that's fairly well known around the world, simple in concept. Basically it says the first line of defense is operational management, and their job is to control business operations and own or manage the risk and controls in those day-to-day business activities. That sounds simple. The second line of defense is an oversight function, usually a corporate oversight function. Their job is to oversee, assess, and manage risk and compliance activities across the enterprise, not just at a location, but across the enterprise. Corporate risk management groups, corporate compliance groups, things of that nature. They look at it from a cross-enterprise perspective. And finally, the third line of defense is internal audit. And the role of internal audit is what we'll talk about basically in this quick demo. So if you look at what's happened traditionally the place where most controls are documented, most risks are assessed, has been in audit. Auditor's job traditionally has been to go through the organization, formally document controls in their working paper files, and formally express opinions on internal control. What's happening in the 3 lines of defense, what's supposed to happen at least, is that much more of that information, much more risk information, much more control information, much more compliance information will actually be captured in the first and second line of defense using automated tools. And we've got some tools that will help them do that. So what's the role of the audit department in that particular context? Well, let me step back a little bit further first. What we're looking for is to have a system, or a set of systems that share some regulatory frameworks, share risks across audit, risk, process control, all those activities, share controls and policies across the different activities, the different lines of defense, and to have some kind of ability to share access and share audit findings. So with that in mind, let's just take a quick look at how we do that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you our SAP Audit Management Solution, and give me a minute here to maximize it. And this is what an auditor would look at, signing into our audit management system. So I'm going to stand in the shoes of an internal auditor, and I'm going to look at the risks and controls that have been identified in the system by the first and second line of defense. In terms of our solutions, I'm going to look at some risks and controls that were identified, risks and risk management, controls and process control. And my job as an auditor is just to assess the completeness and reliability of that information. Now, I haven't dummied up this database to make it look in any particularly special way, but let's take a look at what we've got here. I've just clicked into the risk register. In our audit management solution, internal auditors can access the risk register created in the risk management system. And I know what I want to look for is a breach of customer privacy, and basically I'll take a look for that right now. If I can type in the search bar breach and hit the search bar, I'm looking for risk, breach of customer privacy, and there it is. Now I know it's there because the second line of defense established that as a category of risk that we want to look at across the organization. And I can see, in fact, that there is such a risk, and I can actually click into it right here. And it'll require me, in this case, to sign in, which I will do, simply enough, in order to look at that risk and look at the responses relating to that risk. So here I am. I'm now in the risk management system, and I'm looking at the risk. Sure enough, we have a risk there. It's called breach of customer privacy, and you've got some other data underneath that in terms of the organization unit being utilities, and the objective it applies to is safeguarding data integrity. I'm not going to go through all the fields on the form, but it's enough for now to indicate that we have a risk there. So as an auditor, I'm glad to see that the business has identified that risk. I can look at key risk indicators, and what I'm looking for here as an auditor is to make sure that those key risk indicators look reasonable, look like if they were implied that they would in fact pick up risks that related to this, instances or issues that related to this particular risk we predicted. In fact, it was happening. And what I'm seeing here is these are all manual key risk indicators, which means to me that they're not automated, and somebody has to manually enter information to them to be effective. And that really, by the look of it, has not been done. Concern to me as an auditor. Now I want to look at risk responses, and there could be a variety of responses, but what I'm particularly looking for are the controls that are associated with this risk. And what I'm going to do is look at a particular control, monitoring. We've got a control here, click the wrong one, I'll go back up one, monitoring access to sensitive data. So the business says they've got a control in place that somebody monitors access to systems data, to sensitive data. Don't know what it is yet, let's take a look. I'm now going into process control, and I'm looking at that, looking at the description of the control, and you can see it there. We've got a control that ensures that access to system data for creation, update, or deletion is monitored. Read-only access is restricted where customer data privacy is a concern. Okay, that's interesting. Let me see if that control has ever in fact been performed. Let me go to the control performance tab. Is if the control had been performed, the person that performed it and what they concluded from that control would be documented here. It doesn't look like it's been performed. Nobody's acknowledged, in fact, that that control is actually in place. It doesn't mean it's not, it just means the system's not up to date, and as an auditor, that would be concern to me. Let's look at the evaluation of that control. And we've got the evaluation of the control design, which is called adequate, and we've got the self-assessment of the control in terms of its operational effectiveness, and that's called adequate too. Let's click into the control design and see what they did. Yes, they answered those 4 questions, or those 4 questions, and came up with the conclusion that the control is, in fact, adequate. Okay. Didn't document what they did, or didn't document how they came to that conclusion, but the simple answer is they figured it's okay. Let's look at the self-assessment, and in fact, the self-assessment says it's adequate as well. What did they do? They answered those 3 questions. Is the control described correctly? Rate the operational effectiveness. They gave it a 4 out of 5. And do we have written support for your conclusions? Yes, that written support isn't documented here. Okay, so as an auditor at this point in time, I'm a little concerned. I see that the business has in fact captured information about the control. I see in fact that they've documented an assessment and a self-assessment, but their level of documentation really isn't very good. They haven't really described very much at all, so I'd be a little concerned. Now I got a choice of what I could do. I can raise some issues and cause management to take another look at it, or I can actually go back and initiate an audit and say, well, I've got to go back and take a little more careful look at that particular risk of breach of privacy, customer information privacy, and look at it in more detail, and perhaps offer the business some advice. But I have a choice of what to do. My job here is not to duplicate the work that the business has done and test controls the business hasn't got them in place in the first place. My job is to make sure that the business is completely and accurately and reliably describing them. In this case, I have some concern. I might want to go into an audit to do some more investigation. So that's it. Very simple. It shows you the integration between audit management, risk management, and process control, and lets us stand in the shoes of an auditor and look across those 2 systems and see what's going on there.